The words didn't echo. They landed. Not with sound, but with weight, like a steel door slamming shut somewhere deep inside Randy Keller's chest. Effective immediately. Jessica Vale didn't raise her voice when she said it. She didn't need to. Her tone was clipped, professional, rehearsed, delivered with the kind of confidence people borrowed from PowerPoint slides and executive coaching podcasts. The conference room was too bright. LED lights hummed overhead, sterile and unforgiving. The glass walls reflected a dozen stunned faces, people Randy had hired, trained, promoted, defended. 15 years of shared deadlines and quiet victories sat frozen in their chairs, eyes fixed anywhere except him. Randy rested both palms flat on the table. He felt the faint vibration of his pulse against the polished wood. "Understood," he said calmly. Jessica blinked. It wasn't the response she'd prepared for. "I hope the client presentation goes well on Friday," Randy added, evenly. "Hollowgate's expectations are specific." The room went dead silent. Someone swallowed, a chair creaked. Bate Morales, senior analyst, 12 years under his wing, stared down at her notebook like it had personally betrayed her. Jessica's lips pressed together. "What do you mean by that?" she asked. Randy smiled. Not wide, not smug. Just enough. "You'll figure it out." He stood, adjusted his cufflinks, and walked out of the room. His office smelled like burnt coffee and old paper, the comforting scent of familiarity. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, stripping the walls with pale gold. Framed photos lined the shelves, handshakes with satisfied clients, plaques engraved with Client Excellence Award, a crooked crayon drawing taped near his monitor. "World's Best Dad," it read. Randy stared at it for a moment longer than necessary. Then he reached for the boxes. 2, that's all it took. 23 years of work compressed into cardboard and tape. He moved methodically, muscle memory guiding his hands. The blue notebook went into his briefcase, not the box. The leather one followed. Then the smaller black spiral creased, dog-eared, irreplaceable. Jessica hovered in the doorway. She hadn't expected this part either. "Randy," she said, trying for authority but landing somewhere closer to uncertainty. "About the Hollowgate account." "Not my problem anymore," he replied gently, sealing the first box. Her mouth opened. Closed. She left. One by one, his team filtered past. Quiet handshakes, stiff nods, murmured apologies that meant nothing because none of this was accidental. Bate lingered. "This is wrong," she whispered. Randy met her eyes. "I know." The drive home blurred past him in grays and greens. Traffic lights, crosswalks, people moving forward with their lives. Helen was waiting at the kitchen table when he walked in, coffee already poured. "How bad?" she asked. He set the boxes down. "Could be worse." But as he stared at them, his career reduced to cardboard, he felt something sharpen in his chest. Not anger. Not grief. Anticipation. Because Jessica Vale had just made a very expensive mistake. And she wouldn't realize it until Friday morning, when Hollowgate Systems called asking where their presentation was. The presentation only one man knew how to deliver. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and lemon disinfectant, corporate cleanliness trying to mask anxiety. Randy sat with both palms flat on the polished table, feeling the faint vibration of the HVAC through the wood. Around him, the faces he'd known for years avoided his eyes, not out of guilt, out of fear. Fear was contagious in places like this. Jessica stood at the head of the room, posture sharp, blazer immaculate, eyes bright with a kind of ambition that mistook aggression for leadership. "Effective immediately," she said again, slower this time, like she was savoring the syllables. "We're making some changes." Randy didn't blink. She turned toward him, smile tight. "Randy, we've decided to move forward without your role." No preamble, no thanks for 15 years, no acknowledgement of the contracts he'd saved, the clients he'd personally talked down from walking away during recessions and recalls. Just a clean sentence, sharpened to cut. Randy nodded once, calm, controlled. "I hope the client presentation goes well on Friday," he said evenly. The room froze. Someone inhaled sharply. Bates' pen slipped from her fingers and clattered against the table, far too loud in the silence. Jessica's smile faltered. "What do you mean by that?" she asked. Randy looked at her for the first time since she'd spoken. Really looked. Saw the flicker of uncertainty beneath the MBA polish. "You'll figure it out," he said. He stood, chair legs scraping against the floor, and walked out before she could reclaim the room. His office was exactly as he'd left it the night before, tidy, functional, human. Framed photos of product launches. A handwritten thank you note from a client in Singapore. The blue notebook sat where it always did, spine cracked, pages dense with years of handwritten shorthand no one else could decode. He opened a drawer and pulled out 2 cardboard boxes. 23 years of work fit into surprisingly little space. Jessica hovered in the doorway 10 minutes later, pretending to check her phone while clearly waiting for him to say something. Anything. "Randy," she began, then stopped, tried again. "About the Hollowgate account." "Not my problem anymore," he said, tapping the first box shut. She lingered another second too long, then left without a word. One by one, his team drifted past. Quiet handshakes, tight nods, promises whispered like contraband. Bates stayed. "This is wrong," she said softly. Randy met her eyes. "It's business." They both knew it was. The drive home felt surreal. The city moved around him like nothing had changed. Traffic lights cycling, pedestrians crossing, a man arguing into a phone at a bus stop. Randy parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel. He wasn't angry. That came later. Helen was waiting in the kitchen, coffee already poured. She didn't ask what happened. She just looked at him, and he knew she already understood. "How bad?" she asked. "Could be worse," he said. It was a lie, but not the dangerous kind. He set the boxes down by the table and stared at them. Something unfamiliar tightened in his chest, not panic, not grief. Anticipation. Friday loomed like a storm, only he could see. Hollowgate Systems, 8 months of groundwork, dozens of calls, site visits, late-night troubleshooting sessions. A $30 million contract balanced on trust, not slides. Jessica didn't understand that. She thought relationships were data points, replaceable, transferable. They weren't. At 2:13 a.m., Randy sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, coffee cold. Helen joined him without speaking. "You're planning something," she said. "Thinking," he replied. She nodded, waiting. "My phone's been ringing." He added, "Jessica." Helen smiled faintly, and "I'm not her employee anymore." That was when it fully crystallized. Jessica hadn't just fired him. She amputated the company's memory. Friday morning, Brewster's coffee house buzzed with low conversation and espresso steam. Randy sat by the window, phone face down, watching rain streak the glass. 9:47 a.m. The phone vibrated. "Jessica." He didn't answer. By 10:15, 7 missed calls. At 10:23, Bate. "Randy," she whispered, breathless. "They're here, Hollowgate." Jessica's panicking. "She can't find the technical specs," Bate continued. "They're asking for you." "They're not on the server," Randy said calmly. "What?" "They never were." Silence. "The blue notebook," he added. "The one I took home." Bate understood immediately. "Oh my God." At 10:45, the CEO called. "Randy, there's been a misunderstanding." "No," Randy said, "there hasn't." "Name your rate." "I'm unavailable." It wasn't spite. It was truth. By noon, Hollowgate had walked. By 3 p.m., Randy had a job offer. By evening, Jessica was accusing him of sabotage. "This is consequences," he told her before hanging up. He didn't gloat. He didn't celebrate. He let gravity do the work. That night, Randy stood in the backyard, the air cool, stars faint behind city glow. Helen wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," he said, surprised to find it was true. Inside, his phone buzzed with one last message from Bate. "They're blaming you, but no one believes it." Randy looked up at the sky. He hadn't destroyed anything. He'd simply walked away. And somewhere, far too late, Jessica was beginning to understand the difference. The building didn't feel the same once Randy stepped back inside, but this time, he wasn't an employee. He stood across the street from Brimmel Bowworks, coffee cooling in his hand, watching people he'd once protected stream through the glass doors. The company logo still gleamed in brushed steel, polished weakly like a shrine to permanence. 15 years ago, that sign had meant stability, purpose. Now it looked like a mask. His phone buzzed. "Bate, she's asking questions she should already know the answers to." Randy didn't reply right away. He watched Jessica's silhouette move behind the conference room glass, sharp gestures, restless packing, a general without a map. The silence after being fired was strange. Not relief, not rage, something more dangerous. Clarity. Inside Brimmel, the Hollowgate Systems team had arrived early. They always did. Jessica hadn't known that. They didn't sit at the table immediately. Instead, they stood. They wandered. They examined framed patents on the wall, paused at whiteboards, whispered among themselves. The CTO, Elliot Kane, ran a finger across a smudged diagram and frowned. Jessica launched into her pitch too fast. She clicked through slides that looked impressive if you didn't know what you were looking for. Words like optimization, synergy, scalable architecture floated through the room like smoke. She smiled too much, spoke too quickly. Elliot raised a hand. "Can we skip the overview?" he said calmly. "Randy mentioned you, prepared a comparative breakdown of sensor drift at variable humidity levels." Jessica blinked. A fraction too long. "We've refined our approach," she said. "We're focusing on agile delivery rather than—" "That's not what I asked," Elliot replied. Across the table, Hollowgate's procurement director, Mara Vance, leaned back in her chair. Her expression was polite, cold. "Where, Randy?" she asked. Jessica felt the room tilt. "He's no longer with the company," she said carefully, "but everything you need is right here." Mara exchanged a glance with Elliot. "No," she said, "it is." Randy sat in Brewster's coffee house, the hum of conversation blending with the hiss of the espresso machine. He wasn't watching the clock, but he didn't need to. He knew the rhythm of Hollowgate meetings. He knew the point where patience ran out. His phone buzzed again. "Bate, they're asking for your notebook, the blue one." Randy closed his eyes. That notebook wasn't just notes. It was 15 years of memory translated into shorthand only he understood. Scribbles in margins, diagrams refined over dinners, client quirks, unwritten rules. Jessica had laughed at it once. "Analog systems don't scale," she'd said. Randy typed back slowly. "Randy, it's mine." A pause. "Bate, she says you sabotaged the company." Randy's jaw tightened, not in anger but recognition. This was always the move. When ignorance is exposed, blame becomes strategy. He took a sip of coffee. It tasted bitter, appropriate. At 10:27 a.m., his phone rang. Marcus Brimmel. Randy watched the name flash, let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Randy," Marcus said, voice strained, "we need you here." "I was terminated," Randy replied evenly. "Effective immediately." "There, been confusion." "No," Randy said, "there's been choice." Silence. "Hollowgate is threatening to walk," Marcus said. "They're demanding answers only you can give." Randy looked out the window. The sky was overcast, heavy. "I can't represent Brimmel," he said. I don't work for you. We'll pay you, Marcus said quickly. Consulting fee, whatever you want. Randy almost laughed. Almost. This isn't about money, he said. It's about consequence. He hung up. Inside the conference room, Jessica's voice cracked. She'd run out of slides, out of jargon, out of room to hide. Elliot Kane closed his notebook. We gave you 20 minutes, he said. You've given us nothing. Mara stood. Randy promised precision, she said. What you've shown us is noise. Jessica's face flushed. You're making a mistake, she snapped. This company. No, Mara said softly. You did. They walked out. The door didn't slam. It didn't need to. By noon, the office was buzzing. Whispers moved faster than emails. Jessica locked herself in Marcus's office. Bate texted Randy one final message. Bate, they left, all of them. Randy leaned back in his chair. The silence settled, not empty but full. This wasn't revenge, not yet. This was gravity. And gravity always collects its debt. Friday arrived the way storms do, quiet at first, almost polite, the air too still to trust. Randy woke before dawn, not because of anxiety, but because his body was used to early mornings after 15 years of client calls across time zones. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling fan as it sliced the darkness, listening to Helen breathe beside him. The house felt different now, lighter, as if something heavy had been lifted but hadn't yet hit the ground. He slipped out of bed and padded into the kitchen. Coffee, black, no rush, no suit hanging on the back of a chair, no calendar reminders barking at him from his phone. At 7:42 a.m., his phone vibrated on the counter. Bate. She's here early. Too early, she looks nervous. Randy exhaled slowly and took a sip of coffee. It burned just enough to ground him. Hollowgate, he typed back. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Yes, CTO, procurement, legal, full team. Randy closed his eyes. They'd brought legal. That wasn't a courtesy visit. That was a decision meeting. At Brimmill Boworks, the conference room lights were already on. Jessica stood at the head of the table, heels planted like stakes in the carpet, her tablet glowing in her hands. She arrived before sunrise, fueled by adrenaline and something closer to panic than confidence. She'd rehearsed this presentation 10 times. She'd memorized the slides, the talking points, the buzzwords. Scalable integration. Lean deployment. Streamlined calibration. She told herself it would be enough. But the room felt wrong. The Hollowgate team didn't chat, didn't smile. They set their briefcases down with careful precision, like surgeons laying out instruments. Their CTO, Alan Weiss, flipped open a leather-bound notebook, the kind that didn't need Wi-Fi to feel authoritative. Jessica cleared her throat. Thank you all for coming. We're excited to walk you through Brimmill's updated approach too. Alan raised a hand. Before we begin, he said calmly, we were expecting Randy Cole. The name landed like a dropped plate. Jessica smiled quickly, too quickly. Randy is no longer with the company, she said, but I assure you I'm fully briefed on. That's unfortunate, Alan interrupted. He promised us a discussion, not a presentation. Jessica's fingers tightened around her tablet. We'll be happy to answer any questions as we go. The procurement director, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper posture, leaned forward. Then let's skip the slides. Jessica hesitated. Excuse me. Sensor drift, the woman continued. You mentioned in your proposal that you solved it under high humidity conditions. How? Jessica blinked. Well, our R&D team has implemented a proprietary optimization protocol that... That's not what Randy described, Alan said. Silence. Jessica's mouth opened, closed. He said the calibration required manual adjustment at phase 3, Alan continued, flipping a page in his notebook. That it couldn't be automated without compromising accuracy. He said you understood that. Jessica felt the room tilt. Manual adjustments are inefficient, she said, forcing confidence into her voice. Our philosophy is to reduce human dependency wherever possible. The procurement director's expression hardened. Then you don't understand our product. Jessica laughed lightly. I think there may be a misunderstanding. Alan closed his notebook. No, he said, I don't think there is. At 10:17 a.m., Randy's phone rang. Jessica. He watched it buzz across the cafe table, vibrating against the wood like a trapped insect. He didn't answer. At 10:21, Bate texted again. They're asking for the blue notebook. Randy smiled into his coffee. At 10:23, Marcus Brimmel burst into the conference room, breathless, tie crooked, hair damp with sweat. What's going on? He demanded. Alan stood. We're leaving. Jessica spun toward Marcus. We can fix this, I just need. You need Randy, the procurement director said flatly, and you made sure he wasn't here. Marcus's face drained of color. We can call him, Marcus said. Randy is reasonable. At the cafe, Randy finally answered his phone. Randy, Marcus said, voice tight, there's been a misunderstanding. No, Randy replied evenly. There hasn't. We need you here, name your rate. Consultant, temporary, whatever you want. Randy glanced out the cafe window. The street bustled. People moved forward with their lives, unaware that a 15-year empire was cracking somewhere behind tinted glass. I'm not available, Randy said. You're seriously going to let this contract die out of spite? Randy's voice remained calm. This isn't spite. This is structure. You removed a load-bearing wall and assumed the building would stand. Marcus swallowed. Randy. Good luck, Randy said and ended the call. At 10:41 a.m., Hollowgate Systems officially withdrew from negotiations. By noon, Brimmel's internal Slack channels were silent. By 1:15, Jessica was locked in Marcus's office, her voice sharp and frantic behind the glass. At 2:03 p.m., Randy sat in a quiet office across town, shaking hands with Patricia Holloway of Driftshade Limited. We don't need a miracle worker, Patricia said. We need someone who understands that relationships aren't lines on a spreadsheet. Randy nodded. I do. At 4:47 p.m., Bate texted one last time that day. She's blamming you. Randy typed back. She fired me. Bate sent a single word in response. Exactly. That evening, Randy stood in his garage, the cardboard boxes stacked neatly against the wall. Helen watched him from the doorway. You okay? She asked. Randy nodded slowly. Yes, he said. I think I finally am. Because somewhere between the silence of a conference room and the hum of a cafe, the truth had revealed itself. Jessica hadn't fired a man. She fired the future. And now everyone could see it.